It was the night before Friday, and it's my birthday weekend. 7-Eleven babies in the house. You already know. Roll that footage. Like, share, subscribe, follow. Let's get it. Put that fucking jersey down. Let's get into it.
You know it. You know it. Oh, that's my bad. Sorry. One day.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored. They did it.
Left, feet left.
What the hell was that?
Oh yeah. What the fuck are you talking about?
You know, it figures I'd be so pumped up to show my jersey that I almost forget to put the A2D intro on. But ladies and gentlemen, it is Birds of a Feather on A2D Radio, brought to you by Specialized Physical Therapy LLC. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and it is a very special show for you tonight because tonight, the long-awaited debate, Westbrook versus McCoy 2.0. And you know it's between this time me and your boy Pete. And we've even got the avatars to show it. Look at that.
Right.
Look at that. Westbrook and McCoy. We doing it right. There's only one place to go for your top-notch debates, and that's here on A2D Radio. But before we get into the festivities of the evening, we've got to pay some bills. So let's start off with Specialized Physical Therapy LLC. Our dog, Paul Vidal. Find him in Burlington, Cherry Hill, and Princeton. SpecializedPhysicalTherapy.com. We've also are sponsored by the Counseling Center and Sunrise Detox. Many of us, we deal with mental health and addiction issues. If you need mental health therapy or addiction detox, please call 856-651-8117. Tell them that Tom sent you. We're also brought to you by All Campus. They're giving away 20% off everything in their store, including hats, shirts, and team cornhole sets to all subscribers. Don't forget about PhillyDrinkers.com. We can get all your A2D merchandise and Body Check Wellness 20% off. They are sponsoring our poll question today, which is Brian Westbrook is the greatest Eagles running back in franchise history. Agree or disagree? We will get into that. Also want to talk to you guys about the A2D membership. $9.99 a month. Perks include appearances on shows, members-only streams, shout-outs, and weekly sports picks from Money Pot Podcast. All right, so bills are paid. We've got this going on right now. So, Pete.
Well, let's go with the poll first. What is the poll question?
The poll, I already mentioned the poll, but I will pop that up on the screen. Brian Westbrook is the greatest running back in Eagles franchise history. Guys, I want you, viewers at home, to chime in. Tell us if you agree or disagree. And as we go along with me and Pete's debate, we'll see if one of us can sway you to the other side, if you originally agreed or not, or if you stay with your stance. I know this is a very debatable topic, and that's what I love about this topic. It's a great debate to have. In all seriousness, it's a good conversation, and that's why I'm excited for this, because I know no matter what, it's going to be a blast talking about this and talking about it with everyone, all of you guys. So please chime in. We've also got other topics we're going to cover today. We're not going to even talk about just the greatest Eagles running backs. We're going to cover who is the best, which quarterback in Eagles history had the best single season. There are so many to choose from. I know from the top of my head, you got the 04 McNabb season. You've got Mike Vick in 2010. You've got Carson Wentz in 2017. Nick Foles in 2013. So many to choose from. Which one was the best? Also, we'll get into which team was better, the 04 team or the 2017 team. I know 2017 won the Super Bowl, but were they more talented than that 04 team? We'll get into that as well. So, without further ado, Pete, if you can take off your avatar for a second so we can...
No, let's leave it to the ref. The ref is here for a reason.
Well, I know I need to explain how this is going to work to the folks at home so they understand, because this is a formal debate. But pretty much the way it's going to work is we've got our boy Jeff down below. He's going to be our ref and mediator for this debate between me and Pete. And we're going to have, just like the debate between me and Tom originally, we're going to have each of us 1 minute to give opening statements. Pete's going to go first. I'm going to go next. And then after that, Pete can give his first rebuttal. We'll go from there and, go back and forth. Jeff will have, as the ref, Jeff will be able to stop us if one of us is getting out of hand, getting too loud, blah, blah, blah. He will be the ref. It is his job to calm us down and direct the debate where it needs to go. And then at the end of the discussion, he will tell us when it is time for closing arguments. And then once we are done and giving our 2 cents, he will give his 2 cents, his stance, and we'll also get to some comments. But Jeff, thank you for doing this. Thank you for reffing and mediating. Greatly appreciate that. You have a big responsibility here because, for me, everyone always has to reel me in every once in a while because I get loud, I get passionate. If the first debate was any sign, it could get crazy. I feel like I've tuned down, I've calmed down a bit since then, but it is your job to reel me back in. And it's your job too. If I'm making a point and Pete wants to cut me off or anything, it's your job to stop him. So you have a very, very important job tonight, and we appreciate you coming in and doing this for us. So you are going to time us. So the mic is yours. You tell us when to start. Pete's up first, so all you.
Okay, Pete, you are on the clock. You have 1 minute.
So I just want to say that this is greatest running back in Eagles franchise history. That's where I want to steer this conversation. I addressed and I posed this question as it was presented. Not who is the better overall offensive weapon, not who had the better skill set, the better Eagles running back in franchise history. So I'm going to keep this one short because I'm very curious to see what Chux is going to say. Because he may speak to the fact that McCoy wasn't a great punt returner, great kick returner. Well, by the time McCoy came around, we already had Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin to fulfill those roles. I can't sit here and say that Brian Westbrook didn't have the luxury of playing with better skill position players, but he did have the best single-season wide receiver in history for the Eagles, who T.O. had 20 touchdowns in pretty much I think it was 17 or 18 games. So he did benefit from that. He had Big Nab at his prime. When you look at the pure effect, okay.
Hey, I gave you a minute. Chux, your opening statement. Go.
All right. So when you define greatness, you're talking about a player's talent, but also their legacy. All in all, what they did for their team. That's greatness. Okay. And it's close between Westbrook and McCoy. It seriously is. And you can go either way. And, when it comes to McCoy, he is a Hall of Famer or borderline Hall of Famer. He had a better overall career. And I'm not debating that because durability-wise, he had that edge on Westbrook. Therefore, he is a borderline Hall of Famer where Westbrook is not. He had injury concerns. But the conversation at hand is the best Eagles career. So we're talking about stint.
No, it's not. No, it's not. What is the question, Jeff? What is the question, Jeff? What is the question, Jeff?
Okay, he gets an extra 5 seconds because you interrupted. Go.
So the question is greatest running back in Eagles franchise history. So there's stints during their time in Philly. And when you match up everything, stats, talent, and legacy, Westbrook has that over McCoy. And so I will get into all those details as the debate goes on, but that's what we're looking at. And running back consists of everything, not just running the ball. That's a misconception.
Okay, so can I go?
Your rebuttal.
All right, listen. You said overall career. Not even fucking close. Westbrook got replaced by McCoy. He only did it in 5 years. I'll give you the stats. Games played 90. McCoy. Westbrook 107. Attempts 1,461 to 1,308. Benefit of McCoy 6,792 yards compared to Westbrook's 5,995 yards. Yards per attempt 4.6 the same. Yards per game McCoy 75.5. Westbrook 56. This is his rushing stats. Fumbles 14 to McCoy. Westbrook 12. Total touchdowns, rushing touchdowns 44 to Westbrook 37. If you want to look at the receiving yards, 2,282 for receiving for McCoy, 3,790 for Westbrook. That's where he gets the edge. But it's not like it's a completely lopsided at all, because overall his catch percentage over 383 attempts and 300 receptions, McCoy had a better catch percentage at 78.3 compared to Westbrook's 74.1. So when you look at it,
well, hold on. So you're gonna throw stats out there, and I get it, because McCoy is the leading rusher in franchise history
in 5 years,
and he's
5, not 7, 5. Less time, 17 less games.
Okay, no, and I get
season,
that.
less amount of games.
Hey, I get that. Yeah, he had less seasons, and he was the better athlete. He was, as a pure runner, he was probably better, and I've always admitted that. However, you also got to consider context. What do I always say when it comes to stats? Context matters. So you want to throw out that Westbrook had, less, around even yards, in terms of rushing ball, less rushing stats in more seasons. We also got to consider that durability, like I said, played a factor, and that goes against Westbrook. But then also, if you combine stats, yards from scrimmage, which is receiving and rushing, Westbrook still is the franchise leader in yards from scrimmage. You combine both, and Westbrook has that over McCoy. So you're putting all this context into all Westbrook's stats, considering also when he was playing in his stint, when he was, I'd say 03 to 08 was his stint, right? So that's 6 seasons where he was the guy. He was also the only guy except for 04 when T.O. was here. 05, T.O. wasn't here for half the time, and so I don't really count that as much. But other than that, who else is Westbrook playing with? The opposing defenses, game in and game out, focused on Westbrook all the time, and Westbrook always produced. McCoy had much better talent around him to help take the lighter boxes and help take the pressure off of him. So he wasn't always the main guy, the main focus of an opposing defense. So that's the stat wise. Now let's get into you had your rebuttal.
How much time does he have, Jeff?
I was about to cut him off. Hey, I'm watching the timer here. Don't worry, Pete. Don't worry.
No, that's fine, because I responded to yours, so I was going to make a point and then see if you wanted to.
Okay, that's how we want to do it. But rebuttal to his point.
Pete, if you want to still reply to that, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No. Go. All I'm saying, if you look at 2012, the Chip Kelly era, that's really where the skill positions set themselves apart. Westbrook always had McNabb at his prime during his stint. The quarterback position, the most important position on the field, was in flux when McCoy was in his prime in the 5 years that he did it. That's all I'm saying.
But he's still okay.
You keep saying the durability issue, that you can't knock McCoy for that. And this is the biggest thing. One star was still ascending when he left this area, and that was McCoy. Westbrook, the Eagles chose to move on from him because they had a better replacement.
They chose
this whole debate ain't shit if he's still here. If Chip Kelly never changed, if he never trades LeSean McCoy, this conversation ain't shit. This whole debate, it is no debate.
You're saying based on a better one, because Westbrook, like I said, I don't put that against McCoy. At the beginning of the debate, I said McCoy has always been more durable. Durability is the one knock against Westbrook, and I will always admit that. And because of that durability, McCoy is a Hall of Famer. He's a borderline Hall of Famer. So that's I never denied that. I say that, but again, we're talking about the stint in Philly. They didn't replace Westbrook with McCoy because McCoy was just the better talent when they were in the prime. You got to remember, Westbrook he had several concussions. I think he had 2 that season in 2009 that knocked him out. He was turning, I believe, 29 or 30. That was it. His career was done. He went to San Fran in a bad team and barely did anything because he knew his career was pretty much done and retired the year after. You're talking about replacing a guy who had numerous injuries and was in a bad place mentally because of the concussions. That's why he replaced. He didn't replace him because Westbrook was in his prime, but McCoy was better. When I talk about, and that'll lead to my next point. So when you talk about talent at their peak, all right, when they're in their primes and the peak of their game, Westbrook is the better talent in my opinion.
Nope.
And when you're having the running back position, you can't just look at running. That's not what the running back position is.
Dude, I can show you articles from 2012 of Bleacher Report already saying that Shady was a better runner and overall running back than Brian Westbrook in 2012.
No.
2012.
In 2012, Westbrook was retired. What are you talking about?
But I'm saying in 2012, based on his Eagles stint, there are actual articles that say McCoy is already a better overall running back than Brian Westbrook.
I don't care what articles make the most ridiculous statements. I'm talking about what I see. And what
what you see and where it's flawed at. Listen, I'm a year older than you, so I remember Westbrook. Westbrook never gave me.
I don't remember McCoy. What are you talking about?
I'm not saying you don't, but you act like you don't because you feel like you make it seem like McCoy simply because there was a better punt returner and a better kick returner on the roster.
No. I haven't even gotten to that yet.
So sidebar real quick, Jeff. So when we were talking about this debate, Chux brought up the kick returner. And I said, listen, you make it seem like Andy had any other freaking choice but to put Westbrook back there. Obviously, if Westbrook and Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin on the same team, Andy's not putting Brian Westbrook back there to return a kick or a punt. If he has an option to have Deshaun. If you believe that, I can't help you.
You can't put that against Westbrook when Westbrook has always been returning kicks. That's always been part of his game, dating back to college. Returning was never part of McCoy's skill set. He never did that. He wasn't good at it. So if you take them each at their peak. I get what you're saying when it comes to returning, and I'm not in the grand scale of things when you're prioritizing skills, right, and traits. Returning isn't near the top, but you consider it. Because if we're talking about also, if we're going to go to a different position, talk about wide receivers or whatnot, or corners, and if you talk about why do teams sometimes draft a player that, in a certain round, is because they have added ability on special teams. And that's what Westbrook did. When you have that extra dimension, it adds to your value because you contribute in more ways than one. How many times? So Westbrook had Miracle the Marylands too. You're saying that you can't count that as to Westbrook's credit because it's a return play and doesn't.
No, I'm not saying, that at all.
To your point, it doesn't matter. And
I'm saying in the context of this question, Jeff, and please, Jeff, you can what they call it in court. You can allow this evidence to be presented, or you can call it admissible. Do you count kick returns, even how memorable they are, as a credit or not to LeSean McCoy at the running back position when LeSean McCoy never had the equal opportunity to do kick returns?
I never discredited McCoy. I credited Westbrook.
But you can't credit Westbrook and then not knock McCoy for something that McCoy never did.
No, but that's not fair. That's not fair because you're talking about you want to say, okay, well, you can't ignore and not credit McCoy's durability and then have that slammed against Westbrook. I'm not just because one had it and the other doesn't mean you can leave that evidence out. Everything is on the table. You have to consider all facts.
But that's not what the question states.
So the question is greatest running back in Eagles history, right? So I just covered his stats so far. I didn't even get to the talent portion because you cut me off.
If you say you can tell me that Brian Westbrook overall as a player is more talented than LeSean McCoy.
Can I explain?
Go ahead.
Please explain before you cut me off again. All right, and then you can rebuttal. I promise I'm going to let you rebuttal.
Okay.
I'm going to let you respond. Okay, and I don't act like I'm not remembering either player.
I got you.
I remembered both players when McCoy was here. I was a huge McCoy fan. So it's not like I'm discrediting and I forget what he was. Again, I reiterate this. McCoy was probably the better pure runner, more athletic. That's why he had all those rushing stats. And to his credit, he was super talented. He was an elite runner. But there are more aspects. How many times have I said on this show, however times we've known each other, that I said the running back position is there's more to it than just running. And with Westbrook, that's what it came down to. So when the reason why I think by a little bit, and I'm not saying it's a blowout, by a little bit, I have Westbrook as a more talented player in his peak than McCoy was, is because of numerous reasons. One, he had Westbrook's vision was better than McCoy's. If you watch plays from when Westbrook did it, he may not be as athletic, but the reason why he tore off so many big runs is because he knew the nuances of following his blockers and setting up blockers. How many times when McCoy was playing under Chip Kelly or whomever did McCoy get knocked? We've even, as fans, I was even screaming at McCoy, like, hit the hole. He will go east-west way too much and bounce it to the outside too much. That is a thing. That was a narrative behind McCoy, and that was a flaw of McCoy. I'm not saying McCoy had bad vision. I'm just saying Westbrook's was better. Also, Westbrook was more versatile, and I don't think anyone can disagree to that. Westbrook was ahead of his time, much like Marshall Faulk before him. Westbrook was used as a legit wide receiver. McCoy was used as a receiver out of the backfield, and he was really good at it. But Westbrook was literally lining up as a slot receiver, as a wide receiver, and running legit wide receiver routes, something that only Marshall Faulk before him and maybe even Roger Craig before him were doing. He was ahead of his time, but not a lot of running backs did that at that time. He was ahead of his time. If Westbrook was playing nowadays, he would be like, he was a fantasy superstar, but he would be a tier 1 elite running back. Everyone knows that. Not only was he versatile and had better vision, but he had underrated power and strength. You see how bulked up he is. He benched 29 reps on the bench press at the draft. How many highlights do we have of Westbrook stiff arming and bowling over guys? Ask Jonathan Vilma.
Because he couldn't evade him.
Jonathan Vilma. Jonathan Vilma knows all too well about Westbrook's power. Also, Westbrook was the better blocker. He was better in pass protection, and we all know how important that is. And then also, Westbrook was, we already alluded to this, but you can't knock Westbrook for being a great addition as a returner. And finally, Westbrook's football IQ was tremendous. He's often referred to as one of the smartest players to ever play under Andy Reid. And Andy Reid acknowledged that even when he drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire the other year, he would, and that whole conference, the whole report, like, oh, Clyde Edwards is better. You know, the assistant coach said Clyde Edwards is better than Westbrook. Reid was talking about Westbrook in an interview and reaffirming Westbrook was incredibly smart. So all of those have to factor in. I get that McCoy was the better runner and more athletic, and he will have a better highlight reel. But when you encompass everything that the running back position entails, Westbrook was just a better all-around player in terms of talent.
I vehemently disagree. I cannot disagree fast enough, because I feel as if you line up 32 coaches in this league and you have them choose a peak LeSean McCoy or peak Brian Westbrook, majority of them are going to choose LeSean McCoy.
That's what you believe, but
you had your time, sir. You had your time. What I'm saying is, this is kind of what we have with the Zach Ertz thing, sort of. We praise Brian Westbrook for his versatility to be able to line up all over the field. And I understand he created mismatch, but that's just Andy Reid using the best skill position player he had at that time. You need to maximize your talent at the positions that you can maximize your talent. With LeSean McCoy, yes, he's surrounded by better skill positions. That's because Andy had learned by that time that he couldn't just do it with Westbrook, because you couldn't count on him because he wasn't durable. Now, you don't want to sit here and say that's a knock. That has to be a knock, because I knew LeSean McCoy was going to be available. I knew we had our ace running back. You can't not give LeSean McCoy credit for durability and not take it away from Brian Westbrook and for overall talent. You see what I'm saying? You would keep knocking McCoy on his route running because he was never given the opportunity to do so, because the coach never decided to use him as that weapon, because he had other suitable weapons as wide receivers to do that for him. By that time, they may already had other backs around. I'm saying with Westbrook, maybe the touches hurt him because Deuce Staley was here when he first got here. It's just that even Brian Wilson just said it. He said he loves Brian Westbrook. He would choose him over LeSean, even though LeSean was more talented, just because he loves B. West. And I think a lot of people who love B. West like that, and I'm not saying I don't, but I'm just saying if I have the choice between LeSean McCoy at his peak or Brian Westbrook at his peak, I'm taking LeSean McCoy every day of the week, twice on Sunday. That's no knock to Brian Westbrook. And I don't think it's as close in talent as you believe, because it's just as what we can sit here and say Brian Westbrook in this league, what he would do as a fantasy stud. LeSean McCoy did that for years. We're talking 160, 170 yard rushing games. The next 2 or 3 seasons, up until 2018, he was still a top tier running back in this league. And if you put LeSean McCoy, arguably, the best benefit that Westbrook had, he played with McNabb at his prime, in his peak. And would I be so wrong to say that maybe not in 2012, 2013, but for 2010, 2009, 2011, compared to what Brian Westbrook had, and he was running behind those offensive lines back in those times, LeSean McCoy may even have more numbers running behind that offensive line that Brian Westbrook got to run behind.
McCoy had an elite offensive line too.
I'm not saying he did. So you that's what I'm saying. So you're saying both. I feel as that because this is going to tie into the question of 2004, 2017. I'll sit here and say it right now. I think 2004 was a better overall team than 2017. That's just me. 2004 couldn't get it done. They didn't have the breaks go their way. But if you take that 53 versus 2017 53, all day 2004 is better. All day. So if you take a healthy peak LeSean McCoy, you put him on that 2014, does it change? Do we win a chip? We may. I'm not sure. But we have these iconic moments. Miracle in the Meadowlands #2. I get it. But listen, we talk about LeSean McCoy in the Lions game. We don't win that game without him in 2013. Those are memorable moments. Now, he hasn't done that in the playoffs, but he's just tried and true and consistent. That's my only point.
So I get it, and I'm going to respond to two different things you touched on. And like in all seriousness, I completely get and I respect where you're coming from. And this is the reason why it's so close, because you say you believe coaches would in their primes would take a peak McCoy over a peak Westbrook. What have I said a few weeks ago? It depends on how the coach wants to use them. I don't believe that statement. I don't believe your statement that you made, because I believe that creative coaches that want to use like Sean Payton, for example, with the Saints, I believe he would take Westbrook. I believe Andy Reid would take Westbrook. Guys who focus on using the running back in the passing game so much and need a smart and intelligent running back there to handle all those responsibilities would take a Westbrook over McCoy. Whereas run-heavy teams would take McCoy because McCoy is just so reliable as a runner. And to your point, you said McCoy never got that opportunity. That may be the case, but it also may not be. We don't really know. But McCoy was never used like that in college and was never used like that in NFL. We can't go into too many what ifs. We just can't. So I get what you're saying though, and I wish, trust me, if I could say that about McCoy, I would. I would have no problem admitting that about McCoy, but he just never was used that way and never showed that type of skill set. Now, you talked about McCoy being consistent and reliable for so long as a runner and everything. And, you can't knock his durability, and I'm not. And I can't ignore Westbrook's inability to stay healthy. And again, I am not ignoring that, because that's the difference as to why Westbrook's career was short. However, I do refute the fact that you said Westbrook could never be the guy, because what happened in 2006 when McNabb went down? What happened in 2007 when they continued to give Westbrook the ball as the focal point of the offense, both running and receiving? In 2006, he carried that Eagles team that was down and was close to not making the playoffs. He carried that team that had Jeff Garcia as the quarterback to the playoffs, a division title to the playoffs, and won a game and almost beat the Saints in New Orleans. And he had great games in those games. In 2007, as the focal point of the offense, getting the ball repeatedly 25 times a game, 25 touches, he was the leader of the league in yards from scrimmage. He led the whole league. And during that time period, that's why I mentioned before, the fantasy stud that McCoy was Westbrook was that too. He was a top 2 to 3 running back at the time in those years behind in the conversation of LaDainian Tomlinson and Adrian Peterson. And I know that for a fact because when I was playing fantasy that time, I remember I had to get the top 2, top 1, top 3 pick in order to be able to land Westbrook. So I remember he was in that conversation with LT and Adrian Peterson at that time. So, McCoy had good quarterbacks as well. We're going to get into the first the other topic about which QB had the best single season.
He had Kevin
It's not like McCoy didn't have great quarterback play during his seasons. 2010, he had Vic. 2013 with Chip Kelly, he had Vic and Foles. So
still not compared to Donovan in his prime.
And then
it's not close.
At the same time, how many years did we believe that Donovan had a disappointing year? There were numerous. So Donovan is the greatest Eagles QB ever.
Who played in a softer time though? Who played in a softer era?
You can rebuttal. Let me just finish the sentence.
Okay.
It's not like Donovan was out here not relying on Westbrook. Westbrook.
I'm not saying that.
Westbrook was Donovan's safety valve. He was his go-to. When there was no one else, the defense focused on Westbrook, and he still produced massive numbers and came up big. So that's I don't have many other points, but I do want to get into like a couple more. But I'll let you, because I talk long. I'll let you rebuttal again.
Well, it's not so much a rebuttal. I think at this point, and Jeff may feel the same way, that it's flip a coin, depending on what you want, who you want, how you want it. It's flip a coin. I mean, for you, it's Westbrook. For me, it's McCoy. You talk to 10 other fans. We've seen it here. It's a split. It's split for whatever reason. I mean, Prism he brings up Ricky Waters in history year run from 95 to 97, and those stats are crazy.
Yeah.
So now I'll say this though. I mean, just who had the softer division? You can't even. It shouldn't even take you long.
I'm making sure I answer this right. Probably be West.
Right. And NFC East at that time, pretty much you can probably say the NFC in general at that time, 2002, 2009 was not the same. And we don't know. Like it's hard. It's like you don't know who would have did what in this situation if they had that time. I just look at where I run into a problem with your stance on Westbrook versus McCoy is this. I vehemently feel that McCoy is a better overall prospect and player than B West. If you take everything, if you take health into it and body size and being able to stay healthy, and you take their skill set, because if I'm not mistaken, don't get me wrong, and I know B West ran routes, but he was also a killer in the screen game. LeSean McCoy was also a killer in the screen game.
Oh, they both were. They were both. Yeah.
At that time, 2002, 2004. That's kind of, and Andy was kind of still finding himself in his offense at that time. He wasn't doing these wheel routes that we seen with Kareem Hunt and we seen with Clyde Edwards-Helaire back then. I mean, he may do them every once in a while, but now his scheme is more elaborate. And I think you see Westbrook, and we look at Westbrook, and Andy was just like, yo, this dude he could do it all. He could do it all. And I wish Reed had more time with McCoy, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
But I say that to say this again. If Chip doesn't trade McCoy, and McCoy, if you just take 2009 and say even 2016 and just look at his stats, it's not close. And you know what I mean? I think this now, Rookie, you can go. I think the love for B West is the love tied to those teams during that run, because we were in the NFC Championship game year after year after year after year. So you have that run to equate to. That's the outside of winning the Super Bowl, that's the most successful Eagles era of football. Mm-hmm. So players from that team, hell, Ike Reed still got a fucking job in the city from that team, from that time in football. Yeah. Hugh Douglas is down in Atlanta from the same shit.
Yeah.
Barry Brooks is still around here. He was only here for like the first 2 years.
Yeah. No, I hear
when you look at that era, Eagles football, it just holds a special place. And I wish Westbrook would have stayed healthy, because if they would have had them in 2009, if Westbrook was healthy for the full season and McCoy being a rookie, who knows? Who knows? And it maybe even in 2010, who knows? I would have loved to see Westbrook and McCoy in Chip's offense. Yeah, that'd have been fucking mind blowing. Yeah, but unfortunately, we didn't get that. Mm-hmm. And even when McCoy put up numbers like he did in 2013, 2014, Chip said, "All right, this dude, he talked too much. He out of here."
Which was dumb.
You see what I'm saying? So, but at this point, I think I see your point, and I know you see my side. I know it's not for Jeff to make an ultimate decision. I mean, to me, I think it's a draw at this point. That's just me, because there's a lot of people chiming in. Charlie Garner, Ricky Waters. If you look at the Eagles running backs, if you just look at talent,
there are a lot.
There are a lot.
What we lack, what this franchise history is lack in wide receiver greatness, we make up for in running back. There's so many great running backs we've had, so we've been blessed. But yeah, before we conclude, the last points I want to make, like one, you said, like, I know your point about like if McCoy had stayed, he would have better numbers as an Eagle, and I don't debate that. And I think if that was the case and he stayed 2-3 more years and he had the gigantuan numbers over, he would eventually be even the yards from scrimmage leader. Like, I would probably have to give him the cap. But the thing is, that's if. I'm not playing the what if game. I'm taking into account everything as is, and the facts are he wasn't here for that long. So that's what I'm saying. Now, the last points I want to make before we conclude, like, you alluded to kind of like that McCoy didn't have playoff moments, and I don't want to put that against him because the very few chances, very few, he only had 2 or 3 playoff games where he in here that he could he played.
2010 they made it.
2009.
That's when they got aired out by the Cowboys back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, back-to-back. Oh, that was painful. 09, 10, and 13. So we only had 3 playoff games that he played in. So I don't want to knock him too much.
Right. But again, when you get those stats, what did Westbrook, he played in, did they make the playoffs every year that he was here?
No, not every year. No.
06, they didn't make it. No, 06, they did make it.
05, they didn't make it.
05 and 07, they didn't make it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 05 and 07. So I don't want to hold that too much against McCoy, but at the same time, again, you can't hold that against Westbrook because
I'm not.
When I say greatness, remember I define legacy. Legacy is part of it, and part of Westbrook's legacy are those numerous playoff moments. And and I listed them to remind people. 04 during that Super Bowl run, both of the playoff games against the Falcons and the Vikings, he had great games. 06, I mentioned it already, against the Giants and the Saints. Without McNabb, he was the guy on offense. Without McNabb, he had great games in both games. In 08, against the Vikings, all right, that surprise playoff run.
Wasn't that the one he scored? He scored
the last minute
pass, right?
Clutch play in that game too. And you talked about there were McCoy had so many great moments in the regular season, and so did Westbrook. One that always gets overshadowed, and I want to touch on, is the one in 06 against Tampa Bay. It was in Tampa Bay where the Eagles were losing late, and Westbrook catches a dump off, and he takes it to the house. He makes 4 or 5 Buccaneer defenders miss and goes all the way for the go-ahead score. Mm-hmm. But then that's the one where I think Matt Bryant hit a 60. You remember that? So it doesn't get talked about enough because it wasn't a game-winning touchdown. But that's another play where Westbrook, came up clutch, at late in the game. And he's had, I don't need to remind people how many other great moments he's had in the regular season for the Eagles. So there's so many great moments that Westbrook has given to add to his legacy, whereas that's kind of missing from the resume of McCoy. And then very last point I want to make is, I touched on everything that Westbrook is, and you talked about what Westbrook's teams meant to us during that run. I think what doesn't get talked about enough, but what former players and former coaches always talk about was Westbrook's leadership. Westbrook was a unsung, not talked about enough, and underrated leader in that locker room because he was such a class act. He was overshadowed so much by McNabb, T.O., Brian Dawkins, but he came in and he always set an example. He always led the way. And that came to light in that 06 season when McNabb went down, and he had to step up as a leader and lead that team, and he did. And so that's why, like, you know, I count that too. And part of being a player is how you carry yourself as a leader, what you mean to your team and in that locker room. So to conclude, you know, to piggyback off of what you said though in your last statement though, it is so close. And that's what we wanted to, you know, get into this. And it is flip a coin. And like I love this conversation because of the fact that it is so close. Because it's a matter of preference. It's like, do you want someone like me that loves versatility and loves a running back who can beat you in different ways? I'm going to favor Westbrook. Someone like you who wants consistency and that you know, ultimate athlete who's like flashy and everything like that and consistent, you're going to take McCoy. So and to be honest, neither arguments are wrong. It's just preference, and that's why I love this debate, and that's why I was so excited for it. Like, hats off to you because you made great points, and you know it's stuff that I definitely understand and I always take into account and never want to take away from McCoy. But you know, to me, it's always going to be Westbrook. It's always you look at greatness, and Westbrook just exudes that in terms of franchise running backs.
No, I get it, and it's just one of those things. Like Wilson says, he says he was 16 to 22 years old when Westbrook was here. I mean, you always tied to that time in your life. I'm not saying that things aren't just certain elevated off of that, but it's just nostalgic. And you talked about 2 years that Westbrook missed from 2002 to 2009, where Shady only made it 3 out of 5. It's just those teams at that time and that sense of football for the Eagles was on the grandest stage. And Westbrook as a leader, we'll sit here and I'll say it right now. McCoy as a person is absolute asshole. He's a dick. You know what I mean? We all know that. Westbrook is so much of a better person, but we just looking at it from talent in the vacuum. It's so tough. It's so tough because you don't want to, how can I say this? When you look at Westbrook, for me, he's so versatile. You want him to do all the shit that he's good at. You feel what I'm saying? Because he can. Mm-hmm. When you look at McCoy, it's like, okay, he can do this shit, but he's elite at this. So where he's elite at, that's his more opportunities to win, to showcase his skill. So, but I digress. I think we're at a stalemate here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Prism says if you want both, you take Waters. But seriously, Ricky was a bad man.
Ricky was so bad. Yeah, he was great.
He was here, and that was definitely a different area of football.
And I want to say this also: no disrespect to the other all-time greats, Wilbert Montgomery and Steve Van Buren. I mean, I got into an argument with Matt Araki because he was like, "It has to be Van Buren," and I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's hard to compare times. He was so, but like, you know, I obviously none of us were alive when Van Buren played. We can only go off of what we research and what we see, the little bit that we can see, and it's very tough. But like, I don't want to disrespect Van Buren or Montgomery. To me, the conversation when you're talking about the greatest, you're talking about talent and the numbers. It's between these two. I don't think.
And they were back to back.
Back to back was amazing.
It's so continuous, man. And we haven't even talked about like just the crop of running backs that they played with. Like, I think Shady really came into it as being labeled the next guy. Where I'll say Westbrook's path to his success was a lot harder because he had the mentality and the mindset was different. We talk about Miracle to Meadowlands, like those kick return touches. Those are some of his only touches. Like, he wasn't getting touches like that. He wasn't getting running back touches in front of Deuce. Like, he had a lot more to prove.
It was the three-headed monster. Remember?
Yeah, he had a lot more to prove to take that next step. So that just goes back to Westbrook as the person, as the worker. I'm not saying Shady's that dude who has this God-given natural talent.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't work hard, anything like that. God-given natural talent. You know, and then Westbrook was the type that he had to work at it. But it's just a little bit different. So, but all right, let's get into our other topics.
Well, Jeff is set quietly and patiently. So he deserves to have the mic now forever, how long he wants, to give his 2 cents.
Yes.
What he thought about
my apologies, Jeff.
No, you're good.
Our points, but also give his overall take and you know where he sides and everything.
Well,
so
Well,
Jeff,
side note, I would somewhat agree with Mike about the whole Van Buren argument because, and I get it, it's different era, but the fact that Van Buren's records stood and actually his touchdown record from a running back still stands to this day from a career in such a short amount of time, he definitely has to be considered. But once again, like you guys said, it's one of those things comparing eras, especially in era of football where they mainly ran the football. Of course, his number is going to be slightly inflated, but yeah, to your guys' debate, you guys both brought up some great points. Look, Westbrook was a human highlight reel, in my opinion. Growing up watching him, he was definitely one of those guys that you relied on, and it was a major safety goat for McNabb, especially with the lack of talent that he had at the wide receiver position. He had to rely on a lot from Westbrook in those years. So he definitely was a guy that did produce going up against opponents, and he was definitely a guy that stepped up quite big. McCoy, look, the guy was the man. He led the league in rushing one season. He was definitely a guy. He might not have the moments like Westbrook, but he was definitely very consistent. So both guys are tremendously talented, and both guys are definitely deserving of the debate when it comes to greatest running back in Eagles franchise history. Now, as far as your debate and who I would side with and who I would feel is the better running back, I unfortunately, Chux, I'm going to have to agree with Pete and go with LeSean McCoy. And I'll say, I agree with you as far as Westbrook. I would say he was definitely a great running back, but I feel you're valuing a little bit more of the intangibles to Westbrook's play more than the actual performance on the production. So, yeah, Westbrook was probably the better blocking running back, but how often do we see blocking running backs in the NFL make the Hall of Fame? Or his work ethic and things like that. That's all fine and dandy, but I kind of feel LeSean McCoy, he was more consistent with his play. And you keep on bringing up Westbrook's durability. LeSean McCoy was here for less games than Brian Westbrook, and from a rushing standpoint, outperformed him, and he wasn't too far behind as far as receiving yards either. When it came to yards per game from scrimmage, LeSean McCoy still had more yards per game than Brian Westbrook. So McCoy, I feel just from a production standpoint and the consistency throughout his Eagles career, you have to give him the slight edge, in my opinion. Nothing knocked the Westbrook. And the one thing that you sort of hurt your argument a little bit, you kept on building up McCoy. You kept on saying he's a borderline Hall of Famer, which sort of hurt your argument a little bit, in my opinion.
I hear that. I think it's just, I bring up the borderline Hall of Famer because it's the truth. And because I would never deny that. I remember months ago when he first announced his retirement, I gave him a shout out and Chrome was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "What? I'm paying him his dues. Like I hate the guy, but I'm going to give him respect. He's one of the greats." So, I say it as it is. It's just that for the sake of this conversation, like I said in the beginning, you're just talking about Eagle stints. And McCoy had 4 productive years after he left Philadelphia. Yeah. That's been the difference, and so I know you talk about McCoy's stats and everything and averages, and there's always I can't refute the averages being better, but again with me and when it comes to stats, I always consider context and remember that Westbrook was the focal point. His averages, you're talking about a guy who probably was getting stuffed, and the defense was locking onto him so much that brought his averages down. You're talking about a guy also who, he battled injuries. But with McCoy, he had so much talent around him to help free up a lot of that stuff. So whereas Westbrook was always facing heavy boxes, always facing double coverage on his routes, McCoy sometimes didn't have that much attention on him. So, but it's always a tough thing to also quantify.
It is.
You know what I mean? Because I'm providing context, but then unless you have next gen stats, go deep into it and uncover some crazy next gen stat about true yards or something like that, we won't really know how much it really affected either of their circumstances. So
yeah, and I get your point. I agree with that, but just the overall NFL fan, typically what they judge a career on based off career. Yeah, you have to look at the intangibles. You have to look at the eye test a little bit. But ultimately, everyone judges each player's career is based off of stats. And overall, McCoy's numbers show that they were a better overall career than McCoy. McCoy was better than Westbrook.
Average fan is always going to go off of stats, but that's why I hate the average fan.
I agree.
You can't go off
Hall of Fame too.
You got to watch the games. You've got to watch the games. You can't just go off of stats.
But there's no doubting that McCoy. Watching those games. McCoy had his moments too. He was definitely he didn't have the more memorable moments like Westbrook, but he definitely was there. And your argument that Westbrook was more versatile because of the return game. You look at Westbrook's stats, but besides that rookie year, he was not utilized as a return man. And even his rookie year, he only had 20 returns as a rookie. So, when he was given the opportunity, he showed you some stuff, but it's not like it was a consistent guy back there making those returns on a daily basis.
Yeah, because Reed wanted to use him on offense. That's why he didn't.
Yeah, because you use your weapons on offense.
He put him back. He put him back there when he needed a play.
Right.
Just like he did with Deshaun. Like, you need a play, we're going to go to the best weapon back there. So that's what he did. And, I'm not talking when I speak about versatility and then we move on. I'm not just talking about returning ability. The receiving ability is a big thing. And you talk, and anyone that historians,
better receiving back is definitely Westbrook between him and McCoy. But
I think that's why I think a lot of people don't agree with me, because I'm someone who puts, and I've said this all the time, when it comes to the running back position, I don't just look at rushing. The receiving ability of a running back is always going to be as important to me as rushing, because you have to be able to do both. Whereas with other people, they look at running back and they're like, it's more about running. And I disagree, but I don't blame them for having that, mentality. I respect it, because that's always been what a running back does for so long. But as we've seen with Marshall Faulk, with Brian Westbrook, and now with a lot of these running backs now, if you're a running back and you don't have the versatility to be a receiver, you're kind of lost. Like, you're limited in what you can do, and you kind of have to contribute to the passing game now as a receiver in order to have real true value. So, but guys, that was awesome. That took up more than half of our show.
Yeah,
so,
we're gonna go through these topics pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let you guys decide which one you think is the better debate, because we can probably fit in one or two. But do you want to talk about which one the better team was, 04 and 7 or 17, or do you want to talk about which QB had the best single season in Eagles history?
Well, let's try to do 15 minutes on each. So we got about a half an hour left.
Yeah.
So let's do. I guess for Eagles wide receiver draft pick, I think that's easy enough. I mean, it's going to be either Deshaun or Mike Quick. I mean, that's
Carmichael.
Carmichael. That's what I meant. Carmichael.
Yeah.
Tommy McDonald.
You said Tommy McDonald?
Dude averaged a touchdown a game. 49 games, 48 touchdowns. Hall of Famer.
He was. I mean, that's a different time again.
Yeah, exactly.
But, okay, let's get into best Eagles season by a QB, by an Eagles QB. All right, so the nominees that we were talking about. We have Randall Cunningham. Which year was it that he had that monster year?
88.
Was it 88? So 88 Cunningham. 04 McNabb.
08 McNabb too.
Which one was better?
Let me give you the top 5 seasons. The top 5 seasons for single season passes for the Eagles: Carson Wentz 2019, Donovan McNabb 2008, Donovan McNabb 2004, Cunningham 1998, Carson 2016. Nick Foles is
2013, right, for Foles.
28th on this list.
But is that by passing yards?
This is all compiled stats. So this is 28. His 2013 season, he ranked 28th all time out of Eagles QB single season passer.
Okay, so let's go 88 Cunningham. You want to go with 04 or 08 McNabb? Pick one. 04 or 08. As part of the conversation. Pick one. Hurry, we're losing time on this 15 minutes.
Let's go 04. It's more
you want to go 04? Okay.
Okay, 04 McNabb, 2010 Vic, and 2013 Nick Foles, and 2017 Wentz. All right. So those are the nominees, those 5. Okay. Jeff, let's go with you first because again, you waited 45 minutes while you're here to talk. Let's have you go first. Out of those 5, which one gets the nod for greatest single season by Eagles quarterback?
Out of those 5, I'm just gonna go with McNabb. That 04 season, it was special to me. Look, after losing NFC Championship games 3 straight years at home, or 3 straight years, 2 of them at home. The lose of the Bucks, the lose of the Panthers, the way they did back-to-back years, and the criticism that Donovan got when he finally got a receiver, he finally showed the talent that he was able to. When having a number 1 receiver, the talent that he can put on that football field, and it might not be the flashiest season at this point in time when you look at some of these other seasons, but definitely look up to that point. He broke the Eagles' franchise record in touchdowns in a season by an Eagles quarterback. He was the first quarterback at that time to throw for more than 30 touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions in a season in NFL history. At one point, I think he broke the NFL completions in a row record at 24 over 2 spans of a game. And look, T.O. gets hurt, and he still goes on to help lead them to a Super Bowl. Ultimately, they end up losing. But look, McNabb came out the ball that year, and up to that point, we didn't see a quarterback really perform up to that level. Look, the other guys, Cunningham had a great year. He was a very mobile threat, and some of the other performances on the list. But in my opinion, up to that point, and some of the ones that we're judging off to, I feel McNabb deserves a little bit of credit, and in my opinion, had the better of the seasons.
Okay.
Pete, go ahead.
I can't knock 04 McNabb, man. 31-8. Had the highest overall QB ranking out of any season for any Eagles quarterback at 104.8. Almost 4,000 rushing yards, 4,000 total passing yards. I think he was in the MVP conversation that year.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Peyton Manning go break a touchdown record that year.
Yeah. So I mean, you can't not. I mean, Vicky, I think all these other years are memorable for other moments. I mean, Wentz in 2017. I will say this, and this is not, and I'm still gonna go with 04 McNabb. McNabb at that time in the era that he played in, and Peyton doing what he did, we never could say that McNabb was the best QB in the league.
Yep.
I think in the last 20 years, or was playing the best as the best QB in the league. 2017 Carson Wentz.
Oh,
that was where I felt like, man, fuck Aaron Rodgers, fuck Tom Brady. Like we got the one. We got the one. We got it. We got somebody who could be the best at their position in this league out of all 32 teams. Donovan, even though I'm giving him the credit for 04, never, ever, ever made me feel like that. And that may just be because of who else he was playing with around that time.
Yeah. All right. So very good point about the Wentz thing, because I remember back in at that time, we were talking about like after 2017, or like in the middle of it, we're like, this is the best QB we've ever had. He's already more talented than McNabb. He just has to keep this up, and he'll be the greatest. So like we all know how that ended up, unfortunately. But great point, and it's hard to pick one. I think it does come down between 3. 04 McNabb, 17 Wentz, and 2010 Vic. But I'm going to stay consistent with my stance that I've always had. 2010 Vic was the best quarterback I've ever seen.
Okay.
He was absolutely unstoppable. When we talk about numbers for McNabb in 04, he had the 3,875 passing yards, 63. Well, almost 64% completion percentage, 31 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Michael Vick, 62.63 completion percentage. He had 3,018 passing yards. Okay, so 800 less. But look at these rushing yards. 100 carries, 676 rushing yards to go with 9 rushing touchdowns. And then his passing touchdowns and passing interceptions, he had 21 passing touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. So he wasn't turning the ball over either through the air.
No.
And I know we want to rely on stats to support our argument for, because when you look back, it's hard to remember every single moment. But I'm telling you, when I remember Michael Vick in 2010, there was just no stopping him. No stopping him. And you ask that Giants team, and Miracle of the Meadowlands 3, Miracle of the New Meadowlands, and there was just no stopping Mike Vick. He was not only running around like he usually does, elusive as hell, probably maybe the best running QB in the history of the game. But for one season, he was a pocket passer. He was mastering that offense. He was lighting it up from inside the pocket, showing patience, going through reads, making accurate passes, touch passes left and right, down the field, diagnosing. It was amazing to see. Like, I've never seen anything like it in terms of a dual threat quarterback just being unstoppable. And unfortunately, they did lose in the playoffs, and they lost that steam because I honestly believe after they won that game in New York, and then they had that letdown loss to the Vikings, the Joe Webb game, I feel like that killed a lot of momentum from that team. So unfortunately, that puts a hindrance on that season. But to me, I've never seen a better QB than 2010 Vic. Maybe talk about Aaron Rodgers in his prime. You talk about Patrick Mahomes a couple of years ago. Maybe those guys are talking about just more talent. Brady when he had Moss, Peyton Manning in his MVP season. But like you're talking about now, I'm talking about all-time great quarterbacks, future Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and I'm putting 2010 Vic in that conversation because he was just that talented. It just sucks that he wasn't able to be consistent after that season. He lost it after that season. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was just a flash in the pan, but I wish if we could have gotten a couple more years of 2010 Vic, it would have been a totally different story. That dream team thing probably wouldn't have happened. Maybe that buys Reed another couple of years. Who knows? I don't know. But
yeah,
I've never seen anything like.
Did you say? Because I had to step out and get some water real quick. I was coughing up a whole bunch of bullshit over here.
With you.
If he just put a little bit more air for Riley Cooper in 2010.
I know.
Just a little more air.
A little bit.
Just a little more air. Don't throw that pass with touch. Throw it with the gun. Give your wide receiver an opportunity to make a play. And
forgive me if I'm wrong. Weren't they like marching down the field?
Yes. When you do it in the end zone.
It was like a they ran a play when they didn't have to, right? Like they were in a no-huddle, but then like they were for some reason like they didn't have to run a play. They
had Green Bay reeling.
Yeah.
Reeling because they was in the hurry up, no huddle, and then
yep.
They tried to get it off quick, and he had it, and he just didn't put enough air underneath it.
Yeah. Oh,
you also have to remember in that game, David Akers' last game, he missed 2 field goals in that game.
Yes.
He could have had them to win it.
Oh my God!
I was in the locker room after that game, and David Akers was an emotional mess. He knew it was most likely his last game to go out that way, and to let the fan base down. He was literally in tears.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Then we had Alex Henry the next year.
God, it's hard to like to criticize him too much.
Right.
Because David Akers, we love. He was consistent for so long.
Absolutely.
But man, that year was really bad for him. I remember it wasn't only that game, but he had some really bad misses throughout the year.
Yeah.
That kind of was like, he's losing it. So it's crazy how kickers just kind of lose it. Some other performances I want to touch on, and give them the respect. Like 04 McNabb, damn, like he was lighting, and it felt like he finally got that Hall of Fame receiver, like you guys said, the elite receiver, and they were just unstoppable. And adding context, like I always try to do, I think McNabb's numbers could have been higher, but they blew out teams. Yeah. So they were sitting in the fourth quarter
Well, the last 2 games, Reed benched all the starters after T.O. got hurt.
Yes.
So the last 2 games,
Rory Williams,
he had
bro.
Jeff Blake in there.
Yep. They like I remember that being a controversial thing.
Well, yeah, because everyone was worried heading into the playoffs with them basically with the bye, them going 3 straight weeks without any meaningful football. Yeah. How is the offense going to react and adjust and come back from that, especially without T.O.? So remember, everyone was talking. That's what started the whole T.O. saga with him and McNabb, when McNabb and everyone said that we can win without T.O. with the receivers we have, and T.O. took offense to it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they did get to the Super Bowl without him, but, the home field advantage was a big thing.
Definitely.
Any other points? I mean, we talked about Wentz. He was crazy in 17. I remember, I don't know about you guys, but I remember in 2013 season, watching Nick Foles play, and even though the numbers were crazy, I never was I would watch him play and I was never sold.
No.
Did anyone else feel that way? Like I would watch him and his numbers are great, but again, it was a Chip Kelly offense, and Foles just never looked like he was the guy. I don't know.
That and even that Raiders game. Remember, the Raiders were a bad football team back then. So everyone wants to bring up that 7-touchdown game. Yeah, look, the Raiders defense was absolutely garbage at that point in time. And Foles threw 7 touchdowns, whatever it was, in the first half or by 3 quarters. Okay, but I agree with you. Look, just the throwing his passes, and you never had that confidence in him. And that was the thing. With Donovan, if we were down, he might not always came up on top, but we always felt we had a chance. We always thought he had the opportunity to do that. Where Foles put up some numbers, but we really didn't win anything. I think that was the year we made the playoffs and won and we lost in the playoffs in the first round.
We lost to the Saints here.
Yeah, the Saints when they ended up going to the Super Bowl.
That's the one. I think we had just took the lead, and they gave it the big kick return to Sproles.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, but we had a chance. I think it was 3rd and 8, and fucking Riley Cooper had nothing but green.
Yep.
He had nothing but green in front of him, and the pass was on the money, and he just fucking dropped it. He dropped it. It was nobody within 10 yards of him, and he just dropped it.
Yeah. I personally, obviously, I was 2 years old for the 88 Cunningham season. So I don't know if, Pete, you have any.
I'm that much older than you?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if you
I was born in 82.
You were what, 6? Do you remember anything? Were you watching football when you were 6? Do you remember everything?
I remember watching the Super Bowls and shit. I wasn't. My mom and dad weren't big sports fans like that to put it on every Sunday and shit like that. My dad was doing some more other shit.
I mean, I remember, when I was 6 in 92, I was watching a little bit of football. So that's why I was wondering, if you remembered anything from Cunningham, from Cunningham season. But I wish I could speak to it, but I don't have any recollection. But what I will say is I've some of the older fans, they talk about 88 Cunningham like I talk about 2010 Vic. They talk about him like Cunningham was so talented as a dual threat. It just sucks that he didn't have the coach to develop him and put it all the talent all together. Yeah. But I've known a lot of fans that make that claim. So what could have been, right? What could have been?
And then the fucking fog.
Yes.
Fucking Chicago.
So the last topic we'll get into, and this one, I'll be honest, I don't know how I'm going to answer it. I may need your assistance with this, but which team was better, 04 or 17? So, Pete, I know you already talked about it you touched on it during our Westbrook and McCoy bait. Rehash it. Tell us again, your full stance and why you believe 04 was better than 17.
So 04 to me, hands down, is the better team because every level outside of the offensive skill positions. But if you look at that defense, it was ugly. I mean, you couldn't look anywhere. This every fucking level. We're still trying to replace the level of cornerbacks we had on that 04 team almost 20 years later. That people who were born in 04 now are graduating fucking high school. You feel what I'm saying? We're still trying to replace the cornerbacks from that team. And I will say this, 17 team came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Those expectations weren't there. 04, bitch, it was get it right. Like from the rip. You got T.O., no more complaining. There was everybody from week 1 of the preseason. They expected you to be in Jacksonville come February or end of January at that time. You had to be playing in the Super Bowl or else the season was a loss. 17 was the better ride, ultimately because we won and we went down Broad Street. But 04 was the better team, better led team because they had the expectations and the prior history of not getting the job done. So all the pressure was on them for 18 weeks and they had to get it done. And they went out and they made the actual improvement to the team to get T.O. because they saw how 03 ended up when they were in the link and the Carolina DBs, this pussy shit, Todd Stinkston and James Trash all day long. So they knew they had to go get that. You did that and you caught. There was no catching the league by surprise in 04 if you're the Eagles. Everybody knew you was the shit. You had to prove it. Where 17 is, they caught lightning in the bottle. And if anything shows you, back to my Westbrook point, look at the history of the team and the success after that. After those two teams, look where we're at 4 years later removed from that team, the 17 team. Where were we at 04, 4 years later? Fucking back playing Arizona in the NFC Championship game again. Again. So, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer for me. It's 04.
I think so. I'm going to go next, Jeff, if you don't mind. Because I was looking at the rosters and pulled it up on Pro Football Reference just to kind of like jar my memory. And Pete, you're right. That 04 drop, that starting lineup. I mean, just looking at the defense, right? The defensive line had Javon Kurtz, Corey Simon, Darwin Walker, Derek Burgess as the starters. All right. The second level was good. I won't say it's like great, but I mean, you had Jeremiah Trotter in the middle, which was great, and then you had solid players in Semino and Nate Wayne. They were solid. But then that secondary, oh my God. All right. You had Lito Shepherd in his prime, Sheldon Brown in his prime, Michael Lewis in his prime, and of course Brian Dawkins in his prime.
It's just stop.
It's crazy. And then you had on offense that O-line was Trey Thomas again. Like that O-line, we can always talk about O-line during that stint that Andy had.
Trey Thomas is what, your left tackle or right?
Left tackle.
Runyon was right.
I think Artis Hicks was the starting left guard.
Yep.
You had Hank Fraley, who was good at center.
Oh, originally Sean Andrews was left guard, and then he got hurt in the week 1 or week 2. And then Artis Hicks filled in.
Jermaine Mayberry at right guard, and then John Runyon at right tackle. That's a good line. And then obviously you had two good tight ends. You had Chad Lewis and LJ Smith.
Yep.
And then you have T.O. starting at wide receiver 1, and then the brilliance of having T.O., all the other wide receivers fall into a better spot because you have Pinkston on the outside now as your flanker on the outside. That's good. You had Freddie Mitchell in the slot. You had Greg Lewis as the speed guy, and obviously you had Brian Westbrook as a starter. But then you also had Dorsey Levens as the backup. He would spell for short.
He was huge in that Green Bay game.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Man, 04. I'm just reminding myself of the talent on that team. That was crazy.
I said 04 team versus 17 team. That's a fun game to watch. That's a fun game to watch all the way through. How the coaching staffs were both clicking at that time. You had Jim Johnson on defense going against Frank Wright and Doug Peterson on offense. You got Jim Schwartz on defense going against Andy and the OC at that time. It wasn't Morningway against 04, was it?
No, it was Brad Childress.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I mean,
who ended up going to freaking Minnesota because of this?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like I said, this is 04. I know Jeff has to go too. So
yeah,
it's unanimous decision here. Look, ultimately, 2017, people are going to consider the greatest or one of the greatest of all time because they got the job done. They got the Super Bowl. But like what Chux did, when you put up talent against talent, you look at that 04 team. If it was not for T.O. getting hurt, in my opinion, and it was not for Chad Lewis breaking his ankle in the NFC Championship game, we probably win that Super Bowl, in my opinion. I don't care what anyone says. And then you go up against Tom Brady in his prime with a better defense, and you only lose by 3 points. And because of freaking stupid mistakes on the offensive side of the football, and the fact that Corey Dillon was running down our throats. But look, you look at that defense. It was arguably one of the greatest Eagles defenses of all time. You had 3 Pro Bowl defensive backs. The only one that didn't make it that year was Michael Lewis. The story of Trot. People seem to forget.
Left and came back.
Trot left. They brought him back right at training camp, right before the start of the season. They told him, you're not guaranteed a starting job. He fought his way. Week 1, he lays out, I believe it was Jay Fiegels on a special team play, laying him out. And then Jim Johnson finally made the move after Mark Simoneau got gashed, I believe, against the Pittsburgh Steelers that ended our undefeated streak with Jerome Bettis. Trot comes in and makes a huge difference on the defensive side of the football. And then, of course, Donovan, we could argue all we want, but you have arguably the greatest quarterback in franchise history. With T.O., if he would have stayed here longer, could have possibly been the greatest wide receiver in Eagles history. It's just no doubt about it. The talent on that 04 team, it's just unfortunate that they could not get the job done. And the way the event following the Super Bowl, the way it transpired.
Yeah. So I'll give you this question and lead us to the end. Who's the most clutch Eagles quarterback of all time?
It has to be Foles.
Has to be.
Yeah.
When we were bringing up best Eagles season quarterback, I understand it's not full season, but just those 3 games, the fact that he was able to step in the playoffs. I actually have it here. He had
that season, the 2018-2017 season. Where is he at here? That season is he started 5 games, and what the fuck is he?
The most roller coaster ride of games I've ever seen in my life.
Right?
Because he came into the Rams game. I'm not even going to count that, but he made a clutch pass to Nelson Aguilar to seal the game. Okay, huge first down.
Yeah.
I remember that, and then the week after it was against the Giants in that shootout out of nowhere. And
that was the first game after Wentz got hurt.
Yep. Foles lit it up. Came up clutch toward the end. The Eagles pulled it out. Then the slide turned because it went with Raiders, where he had a really bad game on Christmas. Ajayi was the only one that scored a touchdown that game.
Yep.
And then the week after was
that was it. No,
there was one more.
They played Dallas the last week of the season. He didn't play.
The Cowboys. He played the first half. First half or the first quarter.
And then let's keep it what it is. The divisional round against Atlanta, he did not look hot. He did not look. He had it that first half.
Nope.
And that second half off Keanu Neal's knee, man.
That spark or that whatever you want to call it.
Now Jesse Davis says this is interesting. Jesse Davis says 2017 Eagles would have won just by scheme. 2004 defense wouldn't be able to keep up with the modern offensive schemes. I don't know about that, man.
That's not a fair argument because if you have the 04 defense, like, how can I explain this?
That's like saying the 01 Ravens wouldn't have been good now.
Defenses always adjust as long as they have the ability to study it. That's why offenses, like when there's a trend, like was it the Wildcat, for example, right?
Yeah.
It was a trend when the Dolphins came out with it. The year after, no more. Like that's always the thing. Whenever there's this new trend, RPOs in 2017, right? RPOs was the trend. Now, it's used every now and then, but it's no longer the hot commodity. Like it's like stuff like that. It always goes back to not being a trend because defenses learn and they learn to stop it. So I think you can make that. If you make that statement, you can make that statement for anything. Like you can say the 017 defense wouldn't have been able to stop the 04 offense because they weren't facing.
They would have had no answer for T.O. Fuck.
Hell no.
No answer. Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby, are you kidding me? Jalen Mills. Well, he wouldn't whip out any type of like finger wag or anything like that.
That in that 04 team, I'm sorry, I have a little bit more faith in Jim Johnson than I do Jim Schwartz. Jim Johnson, he almost every single year had our defense near the top of almost every defensive categories. When the hell did Jim Schwartz ever do that here? And as you have to remember, that Super Bowl, if it wasn't for Nick Foles outperforming Tom Brady in that offense, our defense still gave up over 500 yards of offense and how many points? Look, like Chuck said, defenses and good defensive coordinators find ways to adjust to new schemes and new flashes in the NFL. So throw that type of statement out there is kind of ridiculous.
I can kind of get it where he's coming from, but it's his fault because this is where, at the end of the day, there's one player on the field that 17 didn't have at that level. That's actually two. If you look at the elite level talent, 04 had it, 17 didn't. They had players playing at an elite level, but not elite talent in their peak. We already talked about T.O. Jim Johnson with Brian Dawkins in 04.
Well, God rest his soul, by the way. God rest Jim Johnson.
He would have killed Nick Foles.
Yeah.
He would have killed Nick Foles. He would have shut Zach Ertz down. Zach Ertz would not. He's scared to come over the middle now. You let him see Brian Dawkins coming downhill at him. See what he did to Algie Crumpler. Algie Crumpler was built like Ahmed Johnson, bitch. And you see he got folded like a damn chair.
Hell, even Hollis Thomas that hit on Vic in the NFC Championship game.
Also consider this. Different times are 13 years apart.
Yeah.
The rules are different. In 17, the rules favor the offense. If you have that 04 team playing with 2017's rules, how much better does that help? How much more does that help our offensive skill players, even outside of T.O.? T.O. we know would go off, but now you have Pinkston running down the sideline, not being able to get touched. You have Freddie Mitchell on the slot and not being able to get touched. You have West not being able to get touched. Like you can't touch any offensive players nowadays. They would have tore it up. They would have torn it up.
And the cover corners is better. Lito and Sheldon.
Exactly.
They would have blanketed them.
Well, the 04 season was the first year with the legal contact, so that rule was in place for that season. But I get your point, and people seem to forget that year because of T.O. being that offense. Todd Pinkston actually led the league in yards per catch that season. I think with like 30 yards.
I did not know that. I didn't
know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Pinkston, like we all like rail on him because like he had some really bad drops.
Alligator arms. That year in Washington.
But he actually was a decent deep threat. Like put him on the outside. He had speed. He was a long guy. So
and even with T.O. hurt and all that, I think in that Super Bowl he still had over 100 yards receiving in that game as well.
Yeah. So
he did. He just couldn't break away. He did. He had the juice to get open. He couldn't just take it and go because he kept getting caught from behind. He just didn't have that extra gear, especially he was catching the slant. And Belichick realized it early, like, okay, well, he can't be this deep. He doesn't have that burst. So they start giving him everything underneath. I remember that, where he would catch it, he would get 5 or 10 yards, and he would run out of bounds.
Yeah, he was a long strider. Like, who can I compare him to? Like, long legs. And so his long speed was good because his long strides would like eat up so much ground, but he didn't have that explosiveness.
That's what makes him like people like Owens, Moss, but then look at who the fastest was the fastest person. That's what made Usain Bolt so amazing because he had the speed, but being so tall and lanky, that stride, it's just like 1.5. His one stride is like 1.5 to 2 other people's strides because it's just so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And strides matter. Like, trust me, when I'm running, like I'm short-legged, my strides are like this long. Like I have to take 5 steps to match one guy's like one stride.
Jesse says, ask Belichick which team was better. He's probably going to say 04 because he needed to fucking cheat to win.
He needed to cheat to beat them.
He needed to
cheat to beat them.
Yep.
And on that note, guys, it was a great a great show. I wish we had more time. This turned out to be awesome. I had so much fun, and the debate turned out to be a great debate. And it's something that I hope that the viewers enjoyed. Again, like I know Chrome said I lost, and Chux loses again. Well, just keep a reminder, when I asked Jason Avant and Quentin Michael, who played with both of them, they both agreed with me and said Westbrook. So I will trust their opinions.
Because they're both still good friends with freaking Westbrook, where McCoy's a dick to everyone.
No, they're friends with McCoy too.
I know.
They wanted to get McCoy back on the show, so they're still friends with McCoy.
Did it happen yet, though?
Not yet. They want to have both of them on there because remember what you know.
They
want to
have a debate with them?
Wow. I need to end this. But what's funny about like us having a debate about Westbrook versus McCoy? Westbrook and McCoy are good friends. Like they're buddies. Like Westbrook took McCoy under his wing that 1 year, his rookie season, and they've been close ever since. Like McCoy looks at Westbrook as a mentor, and they're always. I remember they were on an episode with the Left Coast show, right? Pete, did you listen to that one? Yeah. So that was a good show. But that's what's funny is they're close friends, and we're arguing here like like it really matters. But guys, thank you again for watching. We are brought to you by Specialized Physical Therapy LLC. Find them in Burlington, Cherry Hill, and Princeton. SpecializedPhysicalTherapy.com. Trying to find the other ads. Sorry. We're also brought to you by Counseling Center and Sunrise Detox. Please call 856-651-8117 to reach them. All campus at the store, 20% off everything in their store.
Rand booth every Saturday night.
Yes. Rand booth every Saturday. Go check them out. PhillyDrinkers.com for all our merch. You got Body Check Wellness, A2D promo code to get 20% off. We also got the Manscaped promo code. Don't forget that as well. And also, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, go check out Alan Foy at eXp Realty, 302-682-8820. And last but not least, don't forget about our A2D memberships, $9.99 a month. It's not that expensive, guys. You know you can get that. You pay more for other subscriptions, but you get to have all this stuff out for you, exclusives. So join up on our YouTube, $9.99 a month for A2D memberships. Again, for myself, Chux, for my boy Pete, for my boy Jeff down below, thank you for tuning in. We love you. Stay safe. God bless. And we will see you next week. Peace out.